Hello, and welcome back to Trash with a capital T. Today we are going to be covering something I originally wasn't even planning on. I didn't originally plan on covering, and then I kind of fell on to getting these books for cheap, and I read the first one. I was like, you know what, I got to cover this. I had originally scheduled a different video for this. It was going to be a recommendation video on 90s YA non-horror series, and while I was talking about those, I brought up this series we're going to be talking about today, Left Behind the Kids, as something that I was curious about, but I had never read. I was something I was familiar with. I went to Christian schools growing up. I myself am not religious in any way, shape, or form. Um, but it was something because of the environment that I grew up in and kind of my previously held beliefs and all of that, I knew about. And I had always been curious if these books would hold up as entertainment outside of just being Christian fiction. So I hadn't originally planned on touching this just yet, but then I got an offer on the box set. I got the first 6 books. The box set is a little rough, but I got this for $10. I was like, you know what? If I'm curious, bite the bullet, get them, read the book. The books are wafer thin. This is 150 pages. I think I read this in the span of like over 2 nights, read it in like 2 hours. Took no time. But I bit the bullet. I decided that was something I wanted to cover. And I was originally just going to do a trash take on it. But the more I thought about this, the more I realized I kind of need to explore this in a longer video. I wasn't going to be able to just talk about it really quickly in a minute. For 2 reasons. One, because I find this book I feel is not good. It is a failure as a book. And I'll get into why. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the religious aspects of the book. That's not what I take issue with, because this is religious fiction. I'm expecting that in a book that is religious fiction. I just think there's some narrative issues in here that really keep it from being as good as it could be. I got some major glare on this book. Sorry, that's very glossy. Yeah, but also I'm going to kind of talk about the approach I take when I read stuff that I am not the intended audience for. That's going to come up. I'm going to read books like I have a stack of Sweet Valley High books that I'm making my way through. I'm not the intended audience for that. I'm a 40-year-old gay man. And while now I may be the intended audience because of the camp factor, when these books were written, they were written for teenage girls. I recently read with my office mates, we listened to Twilight. Another one. I'm not the intended audience for that. So there are parts of the book that I didn't really feel connected to, but I still enjoyed it. I approached it how I approached it critically, understanding that this story is not written for me. But is it written well for the people who it's intended for? That's basically my approach. Do I think this will speak well to that audience? And overall, does it work as entertainment? Does it work as fiction? And for Twilight, yes, I think it does. The writing is not always the great, but I think it does. But we're not talking about Twilight today. We're talking about this. Okay, so let's get into a little history with this series. The Left Behind books were written by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. I believe the way the writing of these books worked is the more narrative parts were written by Jerry B. Jenkins. The parts of the book that were more faith-based or theologically based or felt more like the sermon parts of the book, those were written by Tim LaHaye. I bought these books used, and now I don't intend to insult anyone's religion here. I will say I am not giving these people, Tim LaHaye has long since passed away, but I'm not giving any of the foundations behind these books any of my money. I'm not listening to the audiobooks, not reading the digital copies. If I'm going to continue with this, I'll watch them. I'll read them used. That's kind of how I approach problematic authors, or problematic for me authors. They support a lot of groups that I don't support, and actually that actively try and harm my life personally. So, as a gay man. So, yeah. That aside, this series has always kind of been around in my life. And I have read the first book twice. Once when it first came out when I was a kid, and I thought it was good. I was all wrapped up because that was also, I was 13. So I was wrapped up in the excitement of it. And it also traumatized me because I was a 13-year-old who was worried about being left behind because I was gay and I was battling all of this stuff. And it did some damage to me mentally. So why am I reapproaching it? I don't know. facing my fears. But I read it again as an adult, and I really did not enjoy it. It felt clunky. The pacing was weird. I have read good Christian fiction. Frank Peretti writes really good Christian thrillers and horror books. Um, I, he's one that I thought, he blended the faith-based aspects with his storytelling really well, where it felt more natural coming from the characters. That does not happen here. You get some really clunky, like, punch this out. It's sermonizing over storytelling, which is bad sermonizing. The best sermons are well-told stories. And that, I think, is where this fails. Okay, so let's get into the book proper. So, like I said, this book is not hard to read. It is a tiny little book. I flew through it quickly. It is just not all that exciting. So you follow 4 kids. You follow Judd. I'm going to give you the titles of the chapters where they're introduced. So you have Judd the Runaway. He's the oldest of the bunch at about 16 or 17. Then you have Vicky the Rebel. She is our sole female lead. I want to say, is about 15. She's probably the most interesting character to me, but she's still not that interesting. Then we have Lionel the Liar. He's about the same age as Vicky, I think maybe a little younger, so he's probably like 14. We're going to get into what makes this character, not even specifically his character, but him being in this book gets a little tricky. Lionel is our sole character of color. Lionel's black, which is brought up pretty regularly in all of his chapters. And then we have Ryan, the skeptic, who is the youngest at, I want to say, about 12. Moving through this review, this is going to be spoiler heavy. I think I already said that, but if I didn't, we're just going to dig into everything. It's hard to avoid spoilers when the book is 150 pages. Okay. So let me give you the review. Now, I am not going to be reviewing the theological aspects of this. I'm not going to be critiquing Christianity. That is not the purpose of this video. I don't want to go in here and make this attack on someone's belief system. So I'm going to approach this strictly as this book. How is it written? How is this novella, this kid's book, written? Are the characters interesting? Is the writing well done or polished? Is the storytelling well done or polished? Because the Rapture could make for, and has made for, some great storytelling. It is a compelling event. It is something that could pull readers in. This book does not do that. I don't know how, but this book makes the Rapture boring. Actually, I do know how. You know how it does it? It has the characters sleep through the actual Rapture. We miss all of the fun stuff. They literally sleep through all of it. The most exciting thing that happens is Judd, our oldest, he is running away from home. He steals some money. He goes onto a plane to fly to London. This is the same plane from the original Left Behind book. And we see some familiar characters from that book there. And he's stuck on there while the passengers start freaking out because people have vanished off the plane. But even then, we don't really get that much of it. Like, Judd's just kind of sitting there watching everything happening. All of these characters are very passive, which means we get a lot of reaction to, they do kind of react to what they see and hear around them, but they don't do anything until the end of the book, where they go to a church and then they watch a video, and then I think they accept Jesus. That's the most active thing they do in the book. Otherwise, it's really just them reacting to the people around them, their families. With Judd and Vicky, we get kind of the same structure, just at different tax brackets. Judd's family is very wealthy. Vicky comes from a family that lives in a trailer park. Both families are fairly religious, they are Christian families. Judd's starts that way. Vicky's family finds religion after a preacher comes to their trailer park. They both have the same exact reaction to Christianity, which is, it's weird. That's it. It's weird. They don't want to listen. They don't want to go to church because it's weird. It's strange. It's embarrassing. Okay. That's fine if that's how you're going to write it. But both characters are written the exact same way. Lionel is a little different. Lionel comes from a pretty stable family. His mother is a very successful reporter who is now an editor at Global Weekly, which is a newspaper that kind of plays throughout the entire series. His family is very, like, they have a strong Christian faith. They're attached to their church. That they still go back to their original church from the original neighborhood that they lived in. Lionel is dealing with the fact that he has moved from the inner city of Chicago to a suburb outside of Chicago called Melrose Park, which is a real place. And it's kind of that struggle between his identity as a black man and now living in a place where he's separated from his community. It is written about as well as two old white men could write it. They're well. I'm not going to say they did anything bad. And honestly, this is a problem with a lot of 90s YA books, Christian or otherwise. These are old white people writing these books, and they try. They're good intentioned, but race in this book, because it also comes up in Vicky's chapter, race is handled clunkily at best. It is not meant to be mean or cruel, but it feels ham-fisted. And race becomes a major part of Lionel's story, so he's never really, how do I phrase this? It becomes, without it being a driving force, it's just his main identity is he's black. That's it. He really doesn't have much outside of that. And he's not really a Christian for reasons. And he has an uncle who's a drug addict who everyone loves and tries to support, who is also not a Christian, and he's the one person that Lionel is kind of connected to. Lionel is interesting, kind of, more because he doesn't have the same reaction as Judd and Vicky. He doesn't think it's strange or weird. It's just he feels this disconnect with his family's faith. Like, he can participate, he can nod and agree, but he just feels this disconnect. It's never fully explored, but hopefully it gets explored in the later books. And that leaves us with Ryan, the youngest. He's the most directly tied to the main book. He is best friends with Rafie Steele, whose dad is the main character of the main Left Behind books. Rayford Steele. That name. Oh, the names. But Rafie isn't really a character in this book. He's just kind of there to preach at Ryan. Ryan is there to go, that's weird, and run away. And then the rapture happens. Ryan probably gets it the hardest in this book, though. He is, like I said, the youngest. He's like 12 years old. His parents do not get raptured. Everyone else's families get raptured. The other three kids, the older kids, their families get raptured. So those kids are like, well, at least my family's in heaven. No, Ryan's family. So Ryan's dad is killed off page in a plane crash, and Ryan's mom is killed off page when she's driving to O'Hare. First mistake there. She's driving to O'Hare to see if Ryan's dad has landed, and her car gets caught in a gas explosion, and she's killed. So Ryan's family is just brutally blown up twice, dad and mom separately. I got to that, I'm like, why? Why do you hate this child, Jerry B. Jenkins and Tim LaHaye? Why do you hate the youngest? If it was Judd or any of the older characters, I'd be a little, because they're older. But the 12-year-old, no, you're just going to deep fry their parents. Okay, that's probably the most, and the way it's handled is, again, clunky, because they don't have a lot of time for exposition. I got to put this down, my arm's tired. They don't have a lot of time for exposition because the book is so short. So instead, he finds out about his dad's death through a news report. His name is just listed as people who have died in plane crashes. And he finds out his mom's death because he's calling her cell phone, and a cop finally picks up and is like, sorry, kid, your mom blew up. Her body's in this morgue over here. Or at a high school. Not even a morgue, it's a high school. There's too many dead bodies, so yeah. If you hear humming in the background, I think my Roomba is working, so yay. Yeah, but even with all of that, This book is boring. It's too short to DNF, but it's boring. And I told my husband that when we were talking about this, I go, I don't know how, but they made the Rapture boring. And he goes, how do you do that? How? That is a compelling event. That is something that is exciting by nature. A bunch of people vanish, like just leaving their clothes behind, like just suddenly gone. Children are gone. Parents are gone. Like people are just gone. The world is like planes are crashing and cars are crashing and houses are burning down. Like, how do you make that dull? And you do it by just repeating the same message over and over again. Like they don't know how to write these characters because they can't fathom how an unbeliever or how someone who doesn't believe in Christianity would think. So when they are approaching this subject, they just go with, oh, it's weird, it's embarrassing, that's not, but it feels lazy. If you're writing something where you have to have characters have a literal come to Jesus moment, which these characters do kind of off page, which is weird to me because that's kind of the most important part, I would guess. You need to give them valid reasons. Vicky is the closest to having valid reasons. Her kind of reaction to Christianity and religion is her father and mother are not great people, or at least not in the beginning. Especially her father. He's kind of an abusive drunk who can't hold down a job, who's constantly failing the family. And he has his come to Jesus moment when a preacher comes to a weekly dance at the trailer park. And he, goes through the conversion process. He accepts Jesus, all of that. And Vicky doesn't believe him that he has changed. And she keeps trying to goad him to get him to go back to his old ways because she's so sure he's going to fail. And there is a moment or two that work with her because of that. There's a great moment. It actually is one of the few great moments in this book where she's fighting with him and she's trying to get him to be angry and to hit her. And he doesn't. And it was like, okay, but I get why she is hesitant. And if they had leaned into that more, I think she as a character would have been more compelling. But they don't, so she just kind of feels like the female version of Judd. And Judd as a character is such a teenager. We're just like, what the hell is your problem? Your parents are a little strict. They're not that bad. But everything is holding him back. He's an adult now. So what does he do? He commits credit card fraud. Takes a bunch of money off the card and tries to fly to England. Like, it's a Home Alone with a 17-year-old. It doesn't work. And really, the whole point of that isn't even a story mode. It's not anything for the story. It's to have him in the plane so they can recreate some of the scenes from the main series. And introduce a couple characters from the main series, namely Rayford and Hattie, who are both major players. Rayford kind of becomes the leader of what's called the Tribulation Force, which is this underground Christian resistance. And Hattie actually becomes the right-hand woman to Nikolai Carpathia, who is the Antichrist. He is not in this book yet. We have not heard anything about Nikolai. He does get introduced in the first Left Behind book. I'm pretty sure he doesn't come around until maybe book 4, which is called Nikolai High, where the kids have to go to a new One World Order school. Of course, my dog's going off. All the noises. Sound on these videos is always such a struggle. That's why I'm holding my mic. So you're missing a lot of compelling elements. And I get you only have 150 pages to kind of get us to a solid endpoint. We have to introduce the Rapture, which happens in the middle of the book after the first 4 chapters introducing the characters. And really, they're getting ready to go to bed and they don't notice anything's wrong. And then we go into the last 4 chapters and then the last 5 chapters, and those follow each of the kids again, which is, again, we get the same thing. They wake up, their family's gone, except for Ryan, where he wakes up, doesn't know where his parents are. They have not been raptured, and then is notified by the news and a police officer that his parents are both dead. The second half, those 4 chapters, are the kids making their way to a church in Melrose Park, where they meet a pastor. It's one of the last remaining people at this church who has a video from the main pastor to explain what's going on to them, even though they've all figured it out at this point. But again, the chapters feel like repeats of each other, just with slightly different set dressing. And it makes the book very repetitive and kind of dull. And I'm kind of confused as to why you would do that. This is, I mean, obviously you're writing to a Christian audience, so they're familiar with what's going on, but you're not writing anything compelling or new. I mean, it's a lot of reinforcement of people don't like Christianity because they think it's weird or embarrassing. That really is how everyone reacts to Christianity in this book. I'm like, I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, not far from where these books take place. Those areas, my hometown of Wheaton is known for having the most churches per square mile of most towns its size. Like, you're growing up in you're in a predominantly Christian environment. These kids are not going to, it's not like they haven't been exposed to Christianity, specifically Protestant or evangelical Christianity. So you're not writing realistic characters. You're writing straw men, essentially. So readers kind of feel that reinforcement of like, well, they just think I'm weird because I'm, to use a term from the time, a Jesus freak. And I think that's the wrong way to handle this. And good faith-based writers know to avoid stuff like this. This feels kind of sloppy. Now, will this series get better? I don't know. I am going to give the second book a try. I have the first 6, so I might as well. Because I do think it's possible to have faith-based, even though that's not a faith I attest to, I think it's possible to have well-done, inspirational or faith-based fiction. Like I mentioned earlier, Frank Peretti is a pretty good, now, there are restrictions that he has to follow, but he's a pretty good Christian thriller and horror writer. His book, The Oath, actually shocked a lot of people in the Christian world when it came out because it was kind of violent and it dealt with some heavy subject matter like infidelity. And it did it in a way that was appropriate for the audience. And I mean, when you write specific kinds of books for a Christian audience, there are restrictions as to what certain characters can and cannot do. And what happens when certain characters do stuff like cheat on their spouses. And I've read other Christian YA books from when I was a teenager that handled subject matter much more tricky than this, much better. So I'm not going to say these are bad because they're Christian fiction, because that has nothing to do with it. Religious horror is a great genre. It's a genre I actually really enjoy. Sorry, my throat's getting a little dry. But when you're so stuck on the pulpit and you're not worried about telling a good story, you're going to fall flat. Because I think part of the other thing is these books were considered evangelical tool or evangelizing tools. So these were meant to be handed off to non-Christians, where they would read this and then want to accept Jesus. I don't know how successful they were. If anyone has any interesting stories about that, I'd love to hear it. For me personally, having grown up in this would not appeal to a lot. And as a non-Christian reader now, that is not appealing to me. Like, that's not the reaction I had to this. What I did have when I was originally reading the first book was a traumatic response. And a lot of people did. The Rapture material that was really popular when I was growing up was very much like, you might have to be a martyr for Christianity. Are you willing to die for Christ? That came up a lot, which was kind of bolstered. And this is actually covered really well in the second season of Shiny Happy People, which kind of also got me thinking about this. Because this also came out right around the same time Columbine happened. And I forget the young woman's name. It's a tragic story. She was one of the victims. But one of the stories that I believe turned out not to be true was that a young woman was asked if she believed in God. When she said that she did, she was shot. A real woman did die. I don't know if that moment happened. And if it did, that's horrifying either way. It doesn't matter. It's still horrifying. But that was then fed into this narrative. That young woman's death was then fed into this narrative. So it turns into trying to. Now I am kind of picking on Christianity, but I'm going to pick on Christian entertainment at the time because I think it could do better. It owes itself to do better for its audience. VeggieTales can do a great job of being Christian entertainment. VeggieTales can do it, so can you Left Behind. Just saying. But it tries to kind of scare you into belief, which if I was reading this when I was a teenager, if I was in the same headspace I am now, I'd be like, this isn't scary. I want to take a nap, but it isn't scary. The first books were a little more effective, although reading them as an adult now, as someone who has pulled away from that environment, from that church environment, that kind of evangelical Christian environment, it's not as effective because you start to notice like they're going message over material a lot. The one benefit that this book has is because it's so short, it doesn't get a lot of chances to kind of go on tangents that you get with the main books. There's a little bit of, and in an appropriate way, like a sermon is kind of worked into this at the end of the book in an appropriate way. I didn't feel like, oh, we're stopping the book to sermonize. No, it's the kids they arrive at the church in Melrose Park, and the assistant pastor, who's still behind, kind of has a sermon to explain what's going on and what's going to happen. And it works. It gets the message across in an effective way without stopping the story, because the point of the story at that point is we are getting the information that these kids need. The one thing, and I'm curious if this is going to be carried over, is that they actually have the moment where they accept Christ off page. You would think that would actually be a moment that they would use. Like that could be a powerful moment. It is a religious conversion for these characters, or literally a come to Jesus moment. And I'm kind of shocked that they pushed that off page. Do I recommend these books? No, I do not. For a couple reasons, but really just from an entertainment standpoint, it's not entertaining. It's not exciting. It's not compelling. It could be. And that could be an interesting way to kind of bring the idea of the rapture up to people if you're using it as an evangelizing tool, which this is not working as. But as a non-Christian reader, also, it kind of comes off as insincere, especially the way that it handles non-believers. I don't know where these books go. I do know they eventually end with the final return, with all of the final believers who survived the tribulation going up to heaven. It was very funny. I read the reviews for the last adult book. I think it's book 12. And people were like, oh, great, they're all in heaven. Okay. Like, it's kind of, everything's happy now. It's kind of boring. So, you have that problem, but you have plenty of exciting stuff that happens before that. But it doesn't really it's not compelling enough for the material. I was actually shocked at how dull it was. And maybe it will get more exciting as the books go on. I am interested to see how they handle the rise of Nikolai Carpathia, because in the adult books, you have characters who are directly in the room with him. You're not going to have that here, because in the adult books, you have a character, Buck Williams, who's a reporter. Hattie is pretty much connected to Nikolai. So you get these moments where you are with him, and you kind of get this, like, they write him as very entertaining and compelling. He's a good villain. And we don't get any of the Damien moments that happens in a prequel series, which I haven't read yet. I may read, because that one introduces the Antichrist having two dads. Oh, the reviews, it's very funny because the gay characters obviously are, I don't even know if they're gay characters. I think it's like he was the combination of two adult men's DNA, but he has two dads. So it hovers that they might be gay. And they're the bad guys, obviously, because they're raising the Antichrist. But the reviews were just pissed because of the existence of gay characters. But I kind of am like, I want to see how they handle this. I can handle being offended. Like, I won't be like, oh, I won't be shocked. Come on. But that part is curious to me. But I'll stick with the ones I have right now. I don't need to buy any more of these, and I don't buy these new. I only buy them used. I can't. I've done so many versions of this video. I don't know if I already talked about this. When I have authors that usually their money goes towards stuff I don't support, and Tyndale and Tim LaHaye's foundations and stuff like that kind of go towards groups like Focus on the Family, which I have personal issue with as a gay man. So I would rather support independent sellers, booksellers who just happen to be selling used copies. I'd rather give them my money. And they don't need it. They made millions off of these books. There was a movie made with frickin' Nicolas Cage. They've made plenty. So yeah, let's wrap this up. If I do read more of them, I'll probably cover them. I might just do trash takes for them because I don't know if there's going to be enough worthwhile having another full discussion. But this one was interesting enough, and it covered a subject that I haven't seen covered a lot when it comes to trashy books, which is specifically faith-based books. I think I covered it a little in my recap or my getting to know you video when I was talking about category romance, because inspirational romance is a faith-based in a series of books. It's faith-based genre, and covers a lot of the, it's a big seller. That's where you see a lot of Amish romance, stuff like that. All right. So thank you for watching. We have new videos every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. If you like this video, like and subscribe, or, hit that little bell so you see when new ones come out. I'm trying to do some more trash takes as well, so there'll be some more shorts coming out. Otherwise, love what you love what you read, and enjoy it all. And I want you guys to have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, and I will see you all in the next one. Also, don't read this book. It's really boring. Bye.